The window blew out. The wind pulled smoke across the yard like a dark flag. And somewhere inside, something was still moving. Mark Harlan felt the heat before he even stepped off Engine 7. A dry, winter-cold street, frost on the lawns, but the front living room of the small ranch house was already rolling heavy smoke out the eaves. It was the kind of smoke that told an old firefighter the fire had a head start. Dark, pushing, impatient. He pulled his hood up, snapped the SCBA mask to his face, and heard his own breath fill the world in that hollow, familiar rhythm. Lieutenant Ortiz called the size up, voice steady on the radio. Engine 7 on scene of a single-story residential. Heavy smoke showing Alpha side. Confirmed occupants evacuated, one dog still inside, advancing for primary search. Mark didn't waste time. "I've got the search," he said, grabbing the thermal imager and stepping toward the door as the line team stretched a pre-connect behind him. His boots cracked over broken glass from the blown-out window. Inside, the noise changed. Always did. The world outside went quiet, replaced by the low roar of a fire chewing through something deeper in the structure. The smoke dropped fast, thick as wet wool, stinging even through the mask. He crouched low and let the TIC sweep the hallway. Cold shapes. A hot bloom somewhere down the right corridor. A faint whine cut through the static of his radio. He froze, listened. There it was again, thin, exhausted, not human. "Got a possible location on the dog," he called out, voice muffled. "Moving down the hallway, right side." He advanced on hands and knees. Every movement stirred soot across the floor. Something toppled in another room, wooden, light. A micro-reveal that told him fire was moving, pressurizing, shifting its grip on the home. His heartbeat synced with the air in his mask. The doorway to a bedroom flickered with dull orange light. Not flames, just reflection bouncing off smoke. The whine came again, weaker now. He shifted his weight and swept the TIC. A small shape, too still. Mark pushed inside. The heat hit harder, rolling across the ceiling, testing for a place to drop. He reached the dog, medium-sized, probably a retriever mix, on its side near the bed. Its chest barely moved. "Got the dog," he said, scooping it carefully under one arm. The animal's fur was hot, singed on one flank. "Exiting now." The low air alarm chirped once, his reminder he'd been inside longer than planned. Not dangerous yet, but a nudge. As he backed out of the room, a new sound cracked across the structure. A sharp pop from the Charlie side. A warning. Something failing. He quickened his crawl. Engine 7, interior. Hearing structural noise on Charlie. Recommend checking exterior. "Copy," Ortiz answered. "Get out clean, we're opening up." Mark pushed to the hallway and felt a cold bite of air from outside. Another micro shift. Ventilation somewhere had changed. Might help, might hurt, depending on what the fire wanted. He reached the front door, lifted the dog higher against his chest, and stepped into winter morning. The light stabbed through the smoke. His mask fogged slightly as cold air hit it. He took one long exhale. Then a woman, thin mid-30s, ash streaked across her face, ran toward him from where neighbors held her back. She froze when she saw the dog in his arms. Her knees buckled before anyone could grab her, and she collapsed forward, right into Mark. He steadied her with his free arm, felt the tremor in her shoulders, the panic shaking through her breath even though she tried to swallow it down. Controlled emotion, held tight. He recognized it instantly. "Ma'am, we've got your dog." "You're okay," he said from inside the mask, but she wasn't responding. Her eyes rolled back for just a second, exhaustion, shock, cold, all mixing. "Medic!" Mark called out, lowering her carefully onto the frosted grass. The dog gave a weak twitch, drawing air through singed lungs. Medic 12 sprinted over. "We got her, Harlan." As they worked, the woman suddenly clutched Mark's sleeve with surprising strength. Her voice was raw, barely sound at all. There's more," she whispered. A quiet micro-moment hit him in the chest. One of those truths he learned long ago. People rarely tell the full story at first. He leaned closer. "What do you mean?" But her grip weakened. Her head slumped sideways as the medics moved her onto a blanket. Behind him, a new alarm sounded from the house, the kind no firefighter ignores. A deep metal groan from the Charlie side, then a shifting thud. Ortiz's radio crackled sharply. "We've got a noise on the rear, possible collapse starting. All interior crews hold outside." And then, under that, distant but real, something inside the house moved again. The cold air hit Mark's turnout coat as he backed away from the structure. The house groaned again, deep, like a tree trunk splitting somewhere inside the walls. Ortiz signaled everyone to hold position, while he circled around for a visual on the Charlie side. Steam curled off the roof, drifting in the winter air like breath from a tired animal. Mark pulled his mask off for clarity, letting the cold bite his cheeks. The dog was now with the medics, oxygen flowing through a makeshift pet mask. The owner lay beside it, monitored, slow breathing but stable. Still, the things she whispered stuck to his ribs. "There's more." He'd heard that line too many times in his years. Last-second confessions, forgotten kids, hidden rooms, someone unaccounted for. He looked at the house again. Small, one story, but with plenty of corners where danger hides. Ortiz came back around from the rear, helmet dusted with white ash. Charlie sides bowing in. Something burned hot back there. Could be a hidden void space. "Copy," Mark said. Something in his gut tugged. The owner said there's more, before she went out. Ortiz blinked once, a quiet acknowledgement of what that might mean. "We'll confirm with medics." They approached Medic 12. The woman was awake now, but dull around the edges, eyes unfocused. A young medic knelt beside her. "Ma'am," Ortiz said gently, "you told my firefighter someone else might be inside. Can you tell us what you meant?" A pause. Her mouth trembled, barely noticeable, but Mark caught it. She wasn't overwrought, she was terrified of saying the wrong thing. "My daughter," she rasped. Every muscle in Mark's back tightened. "She was supposed to be at her friend's house last night," the woman continued. "I called them when the fire started. They said she never arrived." A micro moment dropped into Mark's chest like a stone. The house behind him suddenly felt twice as loud. "How old?" he asked. 10. Ortiz didn't waste time. "Engine 7. Prepare for secondary search. We'll do a targeted sweep on the bedroom wing. Truck is ventilating Bravo's side to improve visibility. No interior until I check fire conditions again." Mark pulled his mask back on, tightened the straps, and let the familiar seal settle him. The SCBA inhalation eased his pulse. The world narrowed to training and instinct. The line crew cooled the front room while Mark crouched at the threshold, waiting for the thermal layer to lift. The smoke was still moving fast, pulsing like a living thing. Ventilation on Bravo cracked a window outward, sending a river of smoke rolling low across the floor toward them. "All right," Ortiz said. "We push to the bedroom hallway only. No deeper until we read heat." Mark re-entered. Inside, the environment had changed. Cooler but unstable. Smoke thinned enough to reveal that the hallway ceiling sagged slightly, plaster cracked like an eggshell. A new sound emerged overhead. Small, brittle pops. Electrical wiring surrendering to heat. He swept with the tick. The rooms glowed cold, except one, farther down. A pocket of trapped heat near the closet area. Maybe fire extension. Maybe something else. He moved. Step, check, breathe. His boot nudged something on the floor, a stuffed toy singed at the edges. A tiny bear. A shiver tightened the back of his neck. "Ortiz, I've got children's belongings in the hallway." Continuing to second bedroom. "Copy. Conditions holding for now." Mark knelt and scanned the bedroom. The bed was low, blankets half melted, no shape beneath them, no movement. But the TIAC showed a faint, irregular signature near the far wall. He approached, pushing debris aside. Not a person, a collapsed section of ceiling, still radiating residual heat. The room had been compromised, but not fully burned through. If the child had been here earlier, she wasn't now. A sharp clang erupted from the rear of the structure. Mark's head jerked up. Another micro-reveal, louder, closer. Charlie's side just shifted again. A firefighter shouted from outside. The temperature in the hallway rose a few degrees, small but unmistakable. Mark fought the urge to rush. He backed out of the room, keeping low. Ortiz, bedroom 1 clear, checking secondary room. He crossed the hallway to the last door. The doorknob was warm, too warm. He hesitated, took a breath, then cracked it open. A blast of heat rolled across his gloved arm. Not flames, just pent-up thermal energy searching for escape. The smoke inside was darker, thicker. A bad sign. He swept with the TIC and his pulse jumped. A small heat signature, low to the ground. Still. Unmoving. Possible victim, Mark said, voice steady though his chest tightened. He dropped to hands and knees and drove forward. The smoke tasted different here. Acrid, chemical, the sign of burning plastics or stored materials. Shelving had collapsed. The floor was uneven. His glove touched fabric, soft, child-sized. He cleared debris away until a small form became visible. A girl, curled slightly, face turned toward the floor. He felt a pressure in his throat, held it back and checked airway and position quickly. Victim located, he called. 10-year-old female, unresponsive, initiating removal. Before he could lift her, a violent crack tore through the house, an unmistakable structural fracture from the Charlie side. The floor shuddered beneath his knees. Then came a second sound, deeper, heavier. Something was giving way. The floor trembled again, stronger this time. Dust sifted down through the smoke like gray snow. Mark braced one hand against the collapsing shelving as he pulled the girl closer. "Command, interior. We've got active structural compromise on Charlie's side." Ortiz's voice cut through on radio. "All personnel prepare to exit now." Mark clenched his jaw. "Negative, I have the victim. Initiating rapid removal." He scooped the girl into his arms, careful to support her head. She was light, too light, and her breathing was shallow enough that he had to stare to confirm the rise and fall. The room around him exhaled a wave of heat, pushing against his turnout coat like a warning hand. He leaned forward, preparing to crawl out, and the hallway behind him flashed brighter for a half second. Not flame, just the color of smoke shifting as a pocket of hot gases pushed through. A micro-reveal. Conditions changing, time shrinking. He lowered himself, keeping the girl tight to his chest. "Ortiz, conditions deteriorating. Exiting now." He moved, hands and knees. Slow wasn't an option, but panic wasn't either. His boots slid across scattered plastic, broken drywall, and something he didn't want to identify. At the doorway, he paused, listened. The house creaked in long, painful arcs. Every shift seemed deeper than the last. He advanced into the hallway. The ceiling sag he'd seen earlier now hung lower, almost breathing with the pressure changes. Smoke funneled toward the alpha side as ventilation took effect. It helped visibility, but it also fed the fire somewhere behind him. A quiet memory surfaced. His first year on the job, Lieutenant telling him, "Fire's got a rhythm. You feel it change. You move." He moved. Halfway up the hallway, the girl stirred. Barely a twitch, but enough to make him adjust his grip. "You're okay," he said, breath rattling inside the mask. "I've got you." A short pause, a small, fleeting, emotional beat, and then he pushed on. Near the entryway, his knee struck something solid. He glanced down, the stuffed bear he'd seen earlier. It wasn't a big moment, but it tightened his chest all the same. He tapped it once with his glove, a simple, quiet gesture, then kept crawling. "Interior, you clear?" Ortiz asked, voice taut. "Almost." Then something shifted behind him, a low, rumbling roll that didn't sound like burning material. It sounded like weight moving. "Mark, pick up the pace," Ortiz said. He didn't need the reminder. He rose into a crouch, girl held tight, and made a controlled push toward the front door. Fresh air glimmered through smoke like a thin slice of salvation. A sudden whip of wind pulled smoke toward the opening as Truck 3 completed horizontal ventilation on Bravo. The pressure change dropped visibility for a beat, then cleared it again. Enough. He burst through the doorway, boots crunching onto frozen grass. Cold air knifed across his face shield as he lifted the girl higher. Medics sprinted over. "Set her here," one called. Mark knelt, transferring the girl gently to the waiting team. They lifted her onto a board, applied oxygen, checked vitals. Her chest rose again, weak, but steadier now. Behind him, the house's Charlie side groaned like a dying animal. Ortiz jogged over, breathing hard. "You good?" Mark nodded once. "She's alive." But something in Ortiz's expression made him hold the moment. What? The rear wall's moving. Fire got into the attic and compromised the trusses. "We need full evacuation." As if on cue, a loud crack rolled across the yard, followed by a ripple of collapsing shingles on the rear half of the roof. The entire Charlie side dipped inward. "Back up!" someone shouted. The medics dragged the girl farther toward the engine. Mark stepped with them, sucking a cold lungful of air as he removed his mask. And then a new sound sliced through the chaos, a coughing, choking gasp. He turned. The dog, the retriever mix he'd carried out earlier, was pawing weakly at the grass, trying to stand. The owner, still on oxygen, reached out a trembling hand toward it. The medics moved to steady her, but she locked eyes with Mark instead. "She wasn't supposed to be home," she whispered, voice cracking at the edges. "She said she'd go straight there. I don't know why she came back." Mark swallowed hard. "We got her out. That's what matters now." A radio transmitted a harsh burst of static. Then, "Command, be advised. Fire's running the attic. Conditions worsening. We may need another interior sweep to confirm all clear. There's a void we haven't opened." Mark's pulse stuttered. Another sweep? In that structure? Ortiz turned toward him. "Your call," he said quietly. "You know that layout better than anyone now. We send in a crew, if it's safe enough." Mark looked back at the house. Smoke pumped from the gable vents, dark as coal. The roofline twitched, like it couldn't decide whether to hold or break completely. He felt the weight of the moment sit on his shoulders. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just real. Real in the way decisions on scenes like this always were. He pulled his mask back down. "I'll go," he said. Ortiz opened his mouth to object, but before he could, something inside the house slammed. Loud, sudden, final. Everyone turned. A figure was moving behind the shattered front window. Not fire, not debris. Someone was still inside. The silhouette behind the shattered window staggered, half hidden in the drifting smoke. For a second, no one moved. Firefighters, medics, even neighbors staring across the taped-off yard, all frozen as they tried to understand what they were seeing. Mark didn't wait for confirmation. Instinct shoved him forward. "Mask up, Harlan!" Ortiz yelled behind him. "Already done." The seal clicked tight as Mark sprinted toward the door, pulling his gloves into place. The wind swept a wave of smoke across the porch as another groan rolled from the Charlie side. "Engine 7, stand by with a backup line," Ortiz ordered. "Interior crew supporting Harlan, move!" Mark crossed the threshold and was swallowed again by heat and darkness. Inside, everything had changed. The ceiling layer pulsed violently, undulating with trapped gases ready to ignite. A cold draft from the Bravo side ventilation tugged smoke toward unseen corners. Ash drifted like slow snow. "Interior, do you copy?" Ortiz's voice crackled. "Copy," Mark answered, his voice steady even as sweat prickled under his gear. "Advancing to front room. I saw movement near Alpha window." A beam of daylight filtered in through the broken glass, cutting a thin blade through the smoke. The figure was gone now. No shape, no outline, just the faint scraping sound of something shifting. He swept the TIC. Nothing but heat signatures of fire extension creeping along the ceiling joists. Then, another micro-reveal, a cough. Low, strained, coming from the dining room area that bordered the hallway he'd just escaped earlier. Mark pivoted. "Possible trapped civilian. Moving to the dining area. Copy. Conditions unstable. You've got 90 seconds, tops." He moved fast but not reckless, stepping through debris, ducking under a drooping light fixture warped by heat. The room glowed with orange reflections bouncing off thick smoke, a fire growing impatient. Another cough sounded. Closer. "Call out!" Mark shouted. A weak thump answered. He angled left, sweeping the TIC again until a faint human-shaped silhouette bloomed on the display. Kneeling, slumped forward, near a cabinet that had partially collapsed. He reached the figure. Male, mid-40s maybe, soot covering his face, eyes glassy but open. His legs were tangled beneath a fallen shelving unit. "Sir, I've got you," Mark said, lowering himself. "We're getting out." The man tried to speak, but only a rasp came out. Mark lifted the shelving aside, muscles straining under the awkward weight. The man toppled forward into him. For a brief second, another quiet, emotional micro-moment, the man leaned against Mark like a kid who'd run too far and finally stopped. No drama, just exhaustion. Then the house answered with a violent shudder. A deep boom echoed from the rear, fire breaching into a new space. The temperature spiked. The ceiling above the hallway caved halfway, sending burning insulation spilling down like molten confetti. "Harlan, evacuate!" Ortiz's radio transmission snapped with urgency. "Roof's failing." Mark hoisted the man up, hooking one arm under his shoulder. "We're moving," he said, more to the man than the radio. The guy stumbled as they crossed the dining room, breathing in short, panicked stutters. Mark tightened his grip. They reached the hallway, what was left of it. Smoke rolled like a living wall, and beyond it the ceiling sagged just inches above head level. He knelt low. "We go under. Follow me. Stay on my shoulder." The man nodded weakly. Mark crawled, dragging him along. His gloves slipped on ash-coated flooring, and every shift above them sounded like a roof deciding whether to come down in one piece or several. Halfway through, the man faltered. I can't." "Yes, you can," Mark said, simple and firm. "Right now, you can." A pause, a breath. And the man pushed again. They emerged into the living room as a section of the hallway behind them collapsed, sending a burst of heat across Mark's back. The impact shook dust loose from the rafters. "Go, go, go!" someone outside yelled. Mark hauled the man through the doorway and into the cold morning. Fresh air slapped his mask. The man sagged into the snow-covered grass as medics swarmed in. Mark stepped back, chest rising hard inside the SCBA. The girl, still on oxygen, was being stabilized nearby. The mother reached out a shaky hand toward her daughter, eyes wet but controlled. "You found her," she said when she saw Mark, her voice raw with relief. "She fought," he answered simply. The medics loaded the girl into the ambulance. The mother followed, pale but steady, holding her daughter's hand. The dog, now upright with help, was carried in after them, oxygen mask still strapped around its muzzle. Ortiz approached Mark. "The guy you pulled out, he's the neighbor. Tried to go in when he saw the flames, didn't tell anyone." Mark exhaled, long and slow. "That tracks." "You all right?" Ortiz asked. Mark nodded. "Yeah, I'm good." A brief silence settled. Cold air, engines idling, radio chatter fading behind them. The fire had consumed most of the rear half of the structure now, but the front lawn felt oddly calm. Every call had a rhythm, and this one was finally slowing. He removed his mask, letting the winter air sting his face. A familiar weight settled across his shoulders. Not regret, not pride, just the quiet understanding that came after a hard save. He looked toward the ambulance as its doors closed. The mother was sitting beside her daughter, head bowed slightly, not praying, just present. Real. The engine rumbled to life. Mark watched it pull away, red lights washing faintly across the snowy street. The job wasn't about moments people remembered. It was about the ones they almost lost. And sometimes, he thought as the ambulance turned the corner, you just happened to be the one standing close enough to catch them.